All right. Life of Chance podcasters, I want to welcome today Les Elder. Les, thank you so much for joining me on Life of Chance podcast. We're very excited to have you. Well, I am very excited to have you, and I'm sure that the guests that listen will also be stoked to have you on board today. What's the morning look like so far today for you?
Well, firstly, just thank you so much for having me on, Em. I think it's just so cool that you've started your own podcast. I mean, I got the privilege of interviewing you for a short segment over here in New Zealand earlier this year, and your input into that segment added massive value. So I'm real stoked to be able to be one of the first on your podcast and excited for your podcast journey. What has the day been like today? Well, it's almost well, it's 4 p.m. in New Zealand. So today has actually been not too bad. Had a rough night with the newborn. But got up this morning, did some training, which always makes me feel better. And then the rest of the day I've actually been studying. So studying and mum life.
What are you studying?
So I'm learning to speak Te Reo, so my native language. So yeah, I've been studying that. Me and my husband have been doing that. And yeah, it's just our way of reclaiming our language and being able to raise our kids proud to speak there. Yeah.
When you talk to the mic, do you mind? I think when you face away, it's flicking.
Yep. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, that's so much better.
Okay, cool.
So you've just had baby number 2. You're studying. What else is on the plate in the moment? Are you balancing some commentary bits and pieces as well, or what does the life of Les look like currently?
Yeah, I would say pre-retirement it was just chaos, but at the moment I reckon it's just bites of chaos. So yeah, mum to full-time mum, 2 babies, 1 toddler, 3 years old, and a newborn who's 2 months. So that takes up majority of the time. But outside of that, yep, I'm doing a bit of commentary at the moment. So I've been really fortunate to commentate the Wharapama Cup, which is our national provincial competition here in New Zealand. And yeah, real stoked to be able to do the final this weekend between Canterbury and Auckland.
Yeah.
Studying part-time, so yeah, studying Te Reo Māori to learn how to speak Māori for my whānau, for my family. I've actually just been offered a panelist role to panel as an expert commentary for the Laurie O'Reilly game in September. So that's cool.
Amazing.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
What else? I'm doing a little bit of guest speaking and keynote speaking. So I've got a gig coming up in a couple of weeks, and my topic will be about how my identity has been my superpower. So that's something I'm writing up at the moment.
Oh, I like that. That's a good topic.
Yeah, I love that whole identity space. And then just a little bit of emceeing as well. Got a couple of things lined up, but just because I'm trying to, it's busy being a mum, so trying not to spread myself too thin.
Well done. That's a hard thing as a woman, to try not to actually take on too much. I think we're so, not women in general, but there's a lot of that. You're used to being busy, so you're used to saying yes to everything, and to be able to say no is actually a real skill. So good on you for trying it.
Taken a long time. I wish I had the skill when I was a professional athlete.
Yes. I want to talk to you about your retirement post. So you posted on Instagram, and I quote you, "My time on the field has come to an end, but what I do off this field is only just beginning. I can't wait." So that was in 2022. And I remember reading that post and being quite shocked at the time, because I've followed your journey. I feel like I've sat in your corner from afar as a little cheer squad member. And to see that was quite, firstly, upsetting as a player, to think that potentially your journey was stopped because of someone else's decision. Are you open to having a conversation about that side of the post before I then talk about the opportunity that you're so positive about in the post?
Yeah, of course. I mean, when I say yes to speaking to people and things like that, I don't like to hide anything. So Yeah, 100%. If you've got questions, I'll try to answer them as best as I can.
Yeah. Well, I guess like if I talk through, your journey as a rugby player, you went through the non-professional era. You were also full-time in your rugby just in the lead up to having your first baby. Is that right? When were you a professional athlete from?
No, so of all the years that I've played rugby,
Yeah.
and the 8 years that I've been a Black Fern,
Yeah.
only two of those years have I been a fully
Full-time.
paid professional athlete. So
Wow.
in the Black Ferns 15s,
Yeah.
last year was the first ever year as a fully professional athlete. Um, the other year was in 2016 when I was in the Black
Sevens.
Fern Sevens program. So I was contracted
Got
in the
it.
Black Fern Sevens.
Yeah.
So only 2 years of all of it have I actually been just a rugby player.
Wow. So when you were in that last year of being a full-time athlete and you bounce back from having a child, which I will go into down the track, but like were you feeling like you're at the top of your game? Like obviously it was a hard one for World Cup selection because they did bring through a lot of the Black Fern Sevens girls who are on a different level of fitness and a different sort of stage in their game. But did you feel like you were ready to compete at the World Cup?
Oh, 100%. I mean, you don't do that every day. You don't strive for that excellence every day without having the belief that you're capable of doing it. So I 100% believed that I had every capability to be in that team.
Yeah.
But everyone does, and that's how
Yeah.
it should be. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I was better than anybody else. I mean, obviously I believed I was, but that final decision always sits with the coach, and that's the part that's out of my control, I guess. And I'm probably not going to go into whether or not I thought I should have been there over
No,
this person.
that's all right.
Because I don't think that's
Nah.
the right way to think about it. But I guess the hard thing for me last year, if I'm being completely honest, was I felt that I wasn't given it. And this is hard to say, because to me, I'm a huge believer of every day as an opportunity. Every day that you get to put your boots on, or jump into the gym, get in front of a coach is an opportunity, and I 100% believe in that. But when your only opportunities to actually get in front of a coach are at Black Ferns camps, and you can't get a foot into a Black Ferns camp, it's real hard to be seen. And I think that's the part that I struggled with last year was, I was the captain. And even when the transition of the new coaches occurred, I was the captain. And so, to struggle to even get an invite into camp was really hard.
Yeah.
And can hand on heart say that I went back, I reflected, okay, what do I need to do differently? I need to get creative. So if I can't get in front of these coaches, well, when they come to Tauranga, which is where I live, when they come to Tauranga, I'm going to train on the field beside them. Or when the Black Friends are in the gym, I'm going to go into the gym and I'll do my rugby session in that block so that they can see me while they're in their team environment. Whilst I wasn't in the environment for that camp, I was doing things like that to try and get in front of the coaches. I was sending footage through. So being reflective, I do think that I was proactive in trying to come up with a creative way to get around that obstacle.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really tough to be seen, I guess.
Yeah. And how, like, on reflection or post that conversation that would have happened to say, sorry, not for this World Cup, you're not part of this campaign. Do you think, like, when you reflect, are you proud of the effort that you put into it? Like, because I look at your career and I don't see, the outside doesn't see the way we struggle. I suppose the outside sees the games we play, that we see the captain on the field, and we see a leader and a courageous, warrior for the women. And I guess that's the perception you definitely want to create. But are you proud of what you've presented to the world and the way you've fought for the best of what you can give?
Yeah, 100%. And I think in this life that we live, and you're in it now, is it comes with some shiny moments, it comes with some glamour and some bright lights, but that's not forever, and sometimes it's not the reality. And I definitely got to soak up the bright lights and things that came with being a Black Fern and being the captain of the Black Ferns. But yeah, there was stuff that's definitely unseen. There was stuff that I had to do during a really interesting time. The Black Ferns were transitioning from amateur to professional, and I was the captain during that time, and it was tough. It was so tough because not only has the expectation grown and all of that, but we were also teaching girls what high performance looked like and how to be a high performance athlete, and it was really hard. So yeah, there was a lot of tough stuff to navigate through that time. In reflection, I think that we moved too fast. We moved a whole lot faster than what we were being resourced for. And like I said, when you're having to teach people what high performance looks like, what the standards look like as an athlete and as a Black Fern in this environment, some people don't understand that, or they don't want to jump on that bandwagon. And so often there were a lot of fires that were created, and I found myself putting a lot of those out. So it wasn't, I do not regret my time or my role as a captain, but it was 100% the hardest time in my playing career, through the toughest challenges at me, but obviously on the other end of that gave me the greatest growth. So
Yeah.
I hell of a lot of learnings during that time.
Yeah, I really wanted to ask you about being a captain of your country, because firstly, what you're talking about in terms of the transition between amateur and into professional and into that high performance environment is something that we're going through at the moment in Australia, and we're not definitely on that. We're not hitting the high performance side just yet, but we're having conversations about behaving like high performance, to be treated like high performance, and it is a really interesting place to be balancing, because we've got ingrained behaviors in a group that aren't interested in changing. And how do you if you're still the best player but you're not willing to change, do you still fit into an environment? And it's a really interesting place to be. But I want to ask you, you talked about some of the best and the hardest parts of being a Black Ferns captain. And again, we see this perception of the captain of a team, particularly, a reputable team like the Black Ferns, and say like, amazing, Les leads from the front on the field, and you get that shiny accolade of, the post-game interviews and the other little bonuses that come from the title. But what were you behind the scenes as a captain? How did you lead? What were your, are you a lead by example? Were there a lot of those horrible conversations that you were having about standards and pulling people up? Did you have to? Yeah, I want to understand more about the behind the scenes captain. Is it communicating with coaches every day, players?
Yeah, I think so. I guess just to go back a little bit, when I first was approached to be the captain of the Black Ferns, I actually was planning to go through IVF for my first baby. So I had no interest in being the captain, and I didn't think that I was the right person for the role, because I knew that I would be going through IVF, and I likely wouldn't be there for the team if I fell pregnant, and even during the process of going through that treatment. So initially I didn't actually want the captaincy, and it took a lot of consultation with close people and a mentor of mine for me to actually accept it. And I was really open with the Black Ferns coaches at the time around my intentions to start a family. So knowing that, they still gave me the position. And I guess when I jumped into that role, because we were 1 year into semi-professionalism, so 20 girls, I think, held contracts of 20,000 max. So we all still held full-time jobs.
Yeah.
So very much amateur. But in my head, I thought to myself, okay, we always talk about legacy and leaving the jersey in a better place. Well, it's no different as a captain. So my intention was, knowing that I was starting a family and I didn't know if I was going to continue to play rugby much longer, my intention was, I am a buffer captain. I'm here to fill a gap. Obviously, they see me as the captain. So whilst there is a need to grow future leaders, I will fill this buffer. That was my sort of mindset around it. I'll fill this buffer, and I will help grow the future captain. But in the time that I am the captain, I want to implement strategies and processes so that when that new captain is identified and when they are ready to step into this role, they have systems in place to help them just slot on in and be the best that they can be. Because to be honest, I didn't have that. Now, you would think that that means, okay, I was on the phone with the coach every day and I had leadership meetings and debriefs with coaching groups and things like that. Well, it wasn't like that because we were pretty much amateur. So it was hard to expect people to give over and above what they were giving when they had full-time jobs and they weren't resourced and things like that. But I am a Harry hard out. I'm all in. Once I say yes, that's all I think about. So obviously becoming the captain, even though there was limited resource with time and access to people and coaches, my mindset was, well, we're going to be the best leaders that we can be for this environment. So I demanded a lot in terms of standards, and I demanded a lot in terms of those people that held leadership roles. I was big on roles and responsibilities, and I held people to account to execute those roles and responsibilities. So yeah, it came with some hard conversations, and something I grew quite comfortable doing was having hard conversations. And it came with a bit of a mindset adjustment because to me, it didn't take money to act professionally. You shouldn't have needed to be paid to be a professional. And while that was my belief, and I think it was a belief of a lot of girls, a lot of the ladies in the team, it was hard for some people to execute that because they just didn't know what that looked like and what that meant. And that wasn't their fault. Like I said, we were all amateurs. We weren't being paid. We weren't educated on this sort of stuff. We didn't have what we have now in terms of hubs and all the unions. So that mindset, I don't blame anyone for feeling that way, or thinking that way. That was just the reality of the situation, given the resource and the time we were operating in. So it was hard because I could see where I wanted to go and I could see where I wanted to take the team and where I wanted to grow our leadership. But bringing people along the journey was the real hard part. And that's probably the part of my leadership that I've always had to work on, was showing people, I guess, making people see it too, and then encouraging them to come on the journey with me. I had such big plans to be innovative around just moving towards a player-led environment, but it was met with a lot of hesitation. So yeah, made it a bit harder.
Yeah, I guess that's also the risk of it being a non-professional environment at that stage, is that coaches are still working out what the players are capable of and what they're capable of and what they can let go of, and who
100%.
really is running the show. Is it the players or the coaches? And that's all philosophy down the track as well, that you can only really get your head around when you're spending every day together.
100%. And the thing was too, we didn't have people like access to mental skills coaches, and I didn't know how to lead a national team. Like, no one was educating me on that. I just sort of
Did what you
tried
thought
things.
was right. Yeah.
Yeah, tried things. I was proactive in seeking out my own personal development, because you asked earlier what type of leader was I. I very much believed in just leading through my actions. What I asked of the players, I needed to demonstrate myself. So that was my style. But outside of that, I didn't know what my style was, and I was trying to figure that out. How do I communicate? How do I encourage? How do I inspire? How do I allow or empower others to lead? Like, that was all the stuff that I was learning on the go.
How good. I'm sure that it was an all-consuming environment, but when you look back at the opportunity that you were given by them asking you to be the captain, do you think that there's like massive growth and learning that you take from that you just don't get anywhere else?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, to be recognized as a leader first and foremost, and then to be, I guess, given that honor, massive honor that I just didn't take lightly, and I was extremely grateful. But the coach at the time, Glenn Moore, 100% put his faith in me, and he obviously believed in me to do a role, and I'm extremely grateful for that. Yeah, but the learning from it, I mean, not only the learning, I obviously got opportunities. Like you talk about the media and stuff that I'm involved in now. I think that came because I became the captain. They had to ask me, you know, as a captain, you have to show up for interviews. You get invited to appear as a guest on talk shows. And so from that stuff, you build relationships and people see how well you articulate yourself, how well you speak, all those sorts of things. And then they'll actually, you want to do this, and that grows to something else. And so, I mean, opportunities came as a result of being the captain, but so did a lot of hardship and tears and all of that, which gave growth as well.
Yeah, and also
plus sides to all of it.
Yeah, and putting yourself out there, right? Like it's one thing to be invited to an interview or to an event, and there's another to actually go through the process of investing the time and energy in creating those relationships. And that's definitely something that people take for granted. It's not just turning up. It's like turning up to training and thinking that you're just going to get better from being there. It doesn't happen like that. There's a lot of application and energy involvement and development of skills to be able to have conversations with people. So
yeah, 100%. And I'm massive on learning. I love learning. Like I have an appetite to learn. So
same.
if I'm asked, yeah, it's the best. Like I'm into some learning right now, a space that I'm just so unfamiliar with, but I just love it because I'm learning something. My mind's active.
So
but you're right.
You know,
sorry.
No, please.
You're right though. You don't just get asked and sort of turn up. Like the opportunities that I was asked to engage in, I made sure, like I said, I'm all in. So I made sure I was as best as I could be at it.
Yeah. I circle back to your retirement post, and you said, when you said it's only just the beginning on the off-field part. And is this what you were referencing, that you were already sort of working on without realizing, or was there active work towards the back end of your playing career where you're like, okay, this is something that I am so invested in being in, and I know that I have a place in rugby because rugby has a place in me, and therefore you went searching for the media, or did it fall in your lap as you sort of suggested?
The media stuff 100% fell on my lap. That was not the space that I was referring to at all. I actually have been really fortunate through captaining the Black Ferns to be a member of the New Zealand Rugby Players Association board. So each of the captains of each of the teams in black represent on this board, and we represent the player group. So while I was the captain, I was the Black Fern representative on the board, and luckily enough, I'm still a member of the board. So that side of things really appealed to me. The governance side of the game, the strategy side of the game, the people running our game, the values, and I guess the types of people that we want running our game. That side of it really intrigued me. And I guess during that transition of amateur to professionalism, being involved in a lot of the big discussions going on with the Black Ferns, I was privy to ways of how the game's currently run, and it sparked an interest in me to want to be a part of the change, to want to be at the decision-making table, advocating for the right things. So that was probably what I was referring to in that post, was the passion that I'd developed for the governance side of the game, and hearing that with, I guess, what I stand for and the values that I carry as an individual and how they align to our game. I did see that there was opportunity for me to move into that space and have quite a bit of impact there. So that's kind of something that's happening in the background, I guess, not you don't really
Yeah, it's not the part
advertise that.
that's not the shiny part that you put on social media.
Nah, but that is, I think that is one of the important areas of our game that a lot of more of our women um, deserve or should be a part of those discussions, because we know the game, we're in it, we love it, um, and I feel like there's a lot of good women out there who are advocating for the game, and I want to be one of those.
Yeah.
So that's probably what I was referring to in that post. The media stuff 100% fell on my lap, but it is another space that I absolutely love.
Amazing. I am so interested in the governance stuff, because firstly, I thought we were quite similar in the way we attack the game as back rowers, and then wearing the same number on the back. I always have I looked at you as someone that I set as a benchmark in playing. So then to be able to turn around and realize that, hey, guess what? I'm on the Rugby Union Players Association, Rugby Australia Players Association here, that in a similar capacity. I'm like, wow, I really am like just following you just a few steps behind. So this is a really interesting conversation, because for me, like, these are exactly the same conversations that I'm super passionate about, the way the game is played and who's running it, and how having a voice and being confident, I suppose, in sitting in a room and not being too combative, but also strong in my own opinions, that I have an opportunity to help shape a game that is looking like there is a huge platform at the moment for the women's game in Australia to grow. And I'm in a similar boat, being like, this could be how I help the change, because I may not be there when it's professional, but at least I can know that I've had a seat at the table to help change it.
100%. And that's, I mean, firstly, thank you, because I very much viewed you the same, like an outstanding rugby player. It was only through that conversation we had earlier in the year that I actually have got to speak to you, and speaking with you, I walked away from that interview fully inspired and knew that you would be great in this kind of space. So to hear that you're on the Rugby Players Association for Australia, that's awesome. And whoever's listening, you've got a good one here. So watch this space. I think you're going to do great things.
Thank you. Speaking of inspiration, I watched your social media posts as you were pregnant with your first child, and your perseverance in training. I remember someone at training being like, oh my God, look at the 7 in New Zealand, like training her butt off. Like, you were running broken Broncos with this big bump on your belly. You were using the assault bike, to a point where I was like, I don't think I could do that. And I'm not carrying a child. Like, where do you get the mindset to say, screw it, I'm going to do everything it takes, and I'm not going to let something like having a baby, and by the sounds of it through IVF, get in the way of the other passion in my life, which is rugby? How do you do it?
Oh, I think first and foremost, I love it. Like, it's easier when you love it, right? And I've always been active. I remember winning when I was 8 years old. I won not to toot my own horn here,
But please.
I ran a mud run when I was 8 years old, which was up like huge steep hills and through the forest and things like that. So I'm a farm girl. And I won. I beat adults. And I remember my grandfather saying to me, and mind people's ears, if there's anyone young on here, was, she's got bigger balls than her brothers. And I've got 4 brothers. So that's probably just been who I am. I think, yeah, it's just sort of who I am as a person. But I think there's a little bit of craziness there too. Like,
hey, we have to be crazy to play rugby. We run at people.
Yeah, there's a bit of craziness. But in that time, my motivation was the World Cup, obviously. So I was pregnant, and I knew that at that time the World Cup postponement hadn't happened, so it wasn't very far away. And I knew my mindset was, well, if I train all through my pregnancy, because I knew that there was a period that I wouldn't be able to train as my body recovered postpartum. If I can train right up until I give birth, in whatever period is that I need to rest, that's all that I'm going to have missed. I'll only be 4 weeks behind, or whatever it looked like. So my mindset was just train hard, stay ahead of the game, stay as fit as you can, so that when you're recovered and ready to go again, you haven't lost 9 months.
Yeah. The hill that you're
of,
climbing up isn't that big. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So that was that. I mean, luckily for me, we did. I mean, it wasn't a good time, but it allowed me to just train. Was we were in a
Good.
global
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah.
We shut down. So time was on my side to get up, train, recover all day, train again. But yeah, you got to be a little bit crazy, I think.
Yeah. How good is that? When you when I did my research on you, it said that you moved to Australia. What was the move to Australia when you weren't playing? This was in a period where you'd grown up, you'd played some rugby, you dabbled in it, but you were a netballer in New Zealand. And then I assume the family moved to Australia, to Brisbane.
No, so I'd finished my uni degree. I did 4 years at university.
Yeah.
And rugby in Waikato, because that's where I studied.
Yeah.
Rugby in Waikato had completely died. There was no women's rugby. The current FPC team at that time had been disestablished. So I had no rugby to play. And whilst being a Black Fern was a distant dream, because of the landscape of rugby at that time, kind of couldn't see it because there was no provincial team. So me and my boyfriend at the time, now husband, thought, let's go move to Australia. It was also during a global recession and Australia was booming. So we thought, let's go move to Australia. We'll go make the Aussie dollar. We'll do it for a year and then we'll go live in the UK and do a 2-year working holiday visa. That was the initial plan. We moved to Australia, moved to Brisbane. It's pretty much another suburb of New Zealand. We found ourselves surrounded by Kiwis and Amy Turner, actually, who's a past Australian Women's Sevens team, our player. She's actually from Tokoroa here in New Zealand, and I used to play Waikato Women's Rugby with her, but she was actually the best friends with my husband. So we moved in with her when we moved over there, and then she said, "Oh, come down and come for a jam with my club team," which was the East Tigers, and then there was no turning back. So yeah, my love of rugby never died, but sadly to say for us Kiwis, the Australians resurrected it.
I love that. I was going to say, so does that mean we get to sort of claim your spark back, or are you saying that Amy Turner is actually Kiwi, therefore she sort of shifted your love through a New Zealand channel? I'm going to
look, if it wasn't for moving to Australia, I don't think I would have got back into rugby because, like I said, it was about 10 years. 10 years had passed from the time I finished playing for Waikato to the time it resurrected again. So if I stayed in New Zealand, I probably wouldn't have played rugby at all. So yes, you guys can claim that.
Yes, I like that. So I want to go a little bit different now and go through to sitting on the sideline of the Rugby World Cup 2021, home World Cup for New Zealand, for Aotearoa. Is that right? Is that land in Māori, or is that New Zealand?
It means land of the long white cloud,
which is New Zealand.
Yeah, Aotearoa.
Yeah. Reference. Yeah, cool. Like being part of that commentary team and obviously shifting, a mindset that we talked about earlier with something that's sort of fallen into your lap. How was the experience being part of the commentary team and calling like a billion games of rugby and just sort of being thrown in the deep end almost?
Yeah, exactly. Thrown in the deep end. I feel like that's just the norm in this commentary space. It's just like, here, figure it out, and it's cool. You sink or swim. Yeah, how did it feel? I think initially, again, was another opportunity that I had to really think about, because if I was going to say yes to this opportunity, I wanted to do a really good job of it. I wanted to serve the game and serve the players in a way that people could connect with and enjoy. And so that meant I couldn't, I guess, blur the lines of how I was feeling emotionally in regards to non-selection. And that was going to take a lot of strength. I knew that would take a lot of strength, but I committed to it, which meant, for me, team first always. That's just a no-brainer for me. And so my mentality was, whilst I was hurting, this was about the team. This was about the Black Ferns and doing good by them and this Rugby World Cup as well for the whole of the game. So yeah, it was amazing. I had the best time working with the coolest people. I mean, Christina Sue is one of my closest friends through the Black Ferns. So it was just hanging out with my mates talking code. Scotty Stevenson, who's just a legend in the media space and in commentary, but also personally to the Black Ferns because he is a huge advocate for women's sport. So to be able to work with him during that time, and then obviously Sene, the Irish legend as well, but Kiwi girl. It was cool to meet her and get to know her over those 6 weeks. So we had a real cool team, and we just had so much fun. Obviously, it was the second best seat in the house. I would way rather have been on the field. But, you know, I think if I didn't take that opportunity, I would have sat home or I still would have attended the games, but you would have sat there sort of trying to enjoy it, real mixed in your emotions.
Yeah.
Whereas I still got to be in the thick of it. I got to experience the feel of what it was like on the field. And so it definitely was the second best place to be.
It looked from our perspective, a player's perspective, like you guys were having a blast. So it's so good to hear that it actually was a blast because you made the job look fun. You've made the idea of commentary look exciting and something that as a player, it is in the realm of opportunity. Like I think it's something that for so long, whilst we've been playing, it's been a male dominated space in the men's and women's game. Men commentate rugby. And so to see like 4 strong women like leading the charge in the commentary and in the pre and post game and the halftime conversations, it was pretty powerful as a female player to see that, just to see it. Like, they say, or I say, we say, you can't be what you can't see. And to see females dominating that media space was just so invigorating. As someone that looks at that as an opportunity post rugby, I think, some people want to coach, some people don't want to be involved in the game, some people want to talk about it. I look at rugby and I go, I want to talk about it. I love talking about rugby. I don't necessarily love the idea of getting dressed up and the time it takes before the game, but the idea of being able to talk code and talk strategic, analyze it and pick it apart, that excites me. So to see people doing it, see women doing it, I'm like, yes, like I loved it. It was such a good perception to create to the world.
Yeah, 100%. And like I'm exactly like you, talking code. I'm so grateful that my husband loves rugby because we just talk about it so much. But yeah, we had so much fun, like off air, just being idiots. We'd constantly just mocking each other. It was just the best team, and Spark did a great job of bringing in certain people that had different skill sets and brought different energies. So yeah, 100% the best time. Conflicting time. There were moments of real conflicting emotions, but like I said, I'm grateful for the Spark team for giving me that opportunity because I think I would have had a very different World Cup experience.
Yeah, that's so true. So that kind of leads me easily into, when have you taken a chance and it paid off? Like there could be so many aspects of life or rugby. Like you've referenced multiple in this chat already, but is there a particular time where you've taken a chance and it's paid off?
I think accepting the captaincy was a massive thing that I took a chance on and that people took a chance on me. It paid off, even though I didn't get the fairy tale ending that I dreamed of and that I'd planned and trained for. I still got so much out of that role, probably more internally and as a person than anyone will ever know. So that was a huge one, I think, because I was that close to turning it down, and to then decide, no, I'll give it a crack, and then the flow on of that, what I gained from it, is definitely a moment I think that I took a chance on and it paid off. Yeah.
Nice. And then my second classic question is, when has someone taken a chance on you? And then why do you think they took that chance? And that, like, it probably is Spark, but who knows what the opportunity is that you're going to talk about. But now that I say it, I'm like, damn it, I should have asked this question before.
Yeah, I probably said a couple of moments already, but let's go back to 19 years old in the back in the clubs of Hamilton. My
Yes.
husband, because I had huge fuzzy hair and I wasn't very trendy or attractive, and he's seen something and then he married me. So that's probably the first one. But no, I think if I go back to when I was playing in Waikato, Ruben Samuels was the coach at the time, and he took a chance on me and named me captain of that team, and that probably started off my kind of leadership journey. Not long after that, obviously was named captain of the Black Ferns, and then captain of the Volcanics, captain of the Chiefs, and so it was sort of a ripple effect. But I think if I go back to Ruben Samuels and the initial faith in me.
And why do you think he had the faith in you? What do you think it was that you showed back then for him to go, this is a worthwhile, not risk,
I
but
think it's probably no different to what I showed during my time as a captain, and even now was just I work hard. I work bloody hard. I give everything. I think too. I'm I I walk the talk. I think that's what it was. And like for me, when I think of good leaders, I think who's a leader worth following.
Mm-hmm.
And I would hope to think that that was what they seen, was that I was a leader worth following.
That's awesome. So I have a couple. I really want to talk to you. You've talked about being an advocate and using your voice in the game, and then I see on social media how much of a supporter you are of the Black Ferns community. Like, you're constantly you kind of like in the last 48 hours have like filled my Instagram with this perfect example of what your message is, and how you use your platform, or just your voice and your ability to celebrate others. And I think so often, particularly in Australia, and I'm not sure if it's the same in New Zealand, but there's this like the tall poppy syndrome concept of like, we can't pull other people, we pull other people down because we're worried that either they'll get better than us, or that their success story will be better. And I think it's so cool to see you celebrating just people who have given to the game, or giving to the game, and acknowledging how they're still succeeding, and how that reflects back on the Black Ferns as a brand. And I think that's something that Australia has room to improve massively, is our celebration and the stories that we tell. But you're doing such a cool job of it. Like where do you get it from? Why do you what makes you see some of these girls and think, I want to share their stories? Like, where does it come from?
That's a good question. To be honest, I just see it and I get so proud, like I think to myself, and because I know a lot of those women on a personal level, so to me it's just seeing friends succeed, and I'm all about that, and I've got the best group of friends that reciprocate that for me. So I think naturally, I don't know, I just want to see people succeed. Um, I think too, I have a and like a lot of the women, especially before me. So when I came into the Black Ferns, yeah, 28 years old, definitely an old rookie. But I seen really early the love that the leaders had for that team at the time. And that was the likes of Justine Levere, Linda Itunu, Fiat Masili. So I was really lucky to have some amazing leaders in the environment when I stepped into it. And that love and that affection, it ran deep, and they articulated that, they shared stories. So straight away you connected to it and you felt like you belonged to it. And so from the get-go, I belonged. I was a Black Fern. It didn't matter how long I was going to be a Black Fern or how long I'd been a Black Fern. I was a Black Fern, and I belonged to the sisterhood that had this deep, rich history that we were all so proud of. And I think that's really important. When you belong to something, and you believe in it. And this is stuff that I've learnt from amazing mentors and things like that. But when you belong and you believe, you give. So I think that's
So
where
true.
it sort of sparked from. I belonged to the sisterhood and this legacy. I believed in it 100%. I believed in what it stood for. And so I gave to it. And that giving, I mean, one of the big sort of catchphrases that we actually stole off the All Blacks, but we sort of implemented into our environment when I came into the team was Black Fern 24/7. And for me, just because I retired, just because I don't play in the black jersey
The
anymore, I
Black
still
Ferns.
wear that jersey underneath my clothes. You know, I
Yeah,
still wear it on my heart. So I'm still a Black Fern 24/7. And so that belonging, that believing, and that giving, it doesn't stop. So that's probably just how I see it. Is I'm still a Black Fern.
yeah.
I always will be. The old farmer Silly used to say, once a Black Fern, always a Black Fern. And I believe in that 100%. So while I am alive, I will always give to that legacy.
I love that. That's so good. My final question that I normally have been asking people, or that I'd like to continue asking people, is what are you listening to, doing, reading, or like actively searching for that challenges you or makes you think? You kind of already touched on the language learning. Is that what you're doing at the moment?
That's one, and I'm loving that. I love it because whilst I'm a proud Maori woman who's very connected to my culture and where I'm from, the only piece of my identity that's missing is the language. So I'm 100% loving that journey. But interestingly, that appetite for learning is 24/7. I'm actually in the financial literacy space. So I'm learning about investing, which is just a
Oh,
whole space that I've never had an interest in.
yeah.
Um, but I guess since retiring, the value of time has just really thrown itself at me. And I guess one of the biggest things I've prioritized is where I spend my energy and time so that the people that I love the most get the best energy and time out of me. So financial literacy has been where I've sort of delved into a little bit to create an opportunity where money works for me, and so
Yeah,
I can give. So then I have time to give to my family.
I love that.
But yeah, so I've been listening to Hidden Figures. It's a
Yep.
podcast here in New Zealand, run by two Māori people here in New Zealand. Love it. I can listen to them all day. I listen to multiple podcasts like on repeat. And I'm reading Rich Dad Poor Dad at the moment. So trying to prioritize a chapter a day, a podcast a day. But outside of that, I actually just have finished listening to every single podcast that I could find with Gilbert Enoka as the guest speaker. So if you get an opportunity, listen to his podcast, Gold Nuggets everywhere.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much. It always like this question it's such a daggy one because I think people take for granted how much learning is like around you all the time and how
Ah,
much you can challenge yourself. But when you find someone else that's super passionate about learning and has active options and suggestions of how they learn, it's so good because you can pull
yeah,
so much from other people's knowledge. That's how I feel like I'm a knowledge leech. I don't usually be like, oh, I'm listening to this. I'm like, I'm listening to this because someone else told me to listen to it and it's really good. It's never something that I found by myself. And so I unashamedly steal everyone else's knowledge points and
yeah, same.
and
Why not?
accumulate them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. My mind is like just blowing about this stock markets and Bitcoin and all that sort of stuff. I'm just like, wow. So that's where I'm at.
I love it so much. Thank you so much for your time. Uh, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on Life of Chance podcast. I hope that we can keep talking, and don't worry, I will always be in your little DMs on Instagram cheering for you. So keep posting and keep doing what you're doing because it is so cool.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for having me. Honestly, I'm a supporter from afar across the ditch. I'll be listening in. I listened to Sarah's one the other day. That was gold. I'm looking forward to continuing to listen to your podcast. But also, I can't wait to see you on the 30th of September for that
Absolutely.
Gosh, you get in there, girl. But hopefully see you then. Catch up for coffee.
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Em. See you.